This video will be over how do you multiply a fraction by a fraction. David bought 6 apples that each weigh 1/4 pounds. How many apples or how many pounds of apples did he buy? Show me different ways to represent this problem. Well, I could use pictorial model or I could do repeated addition. He bought 1/4. The first apple weighed 1/4. The second apple weighed 1/4. The third apple weighed 1/4 of a pound. The fourth apple weighed 1/4 a pound. The fifth apple weighed 1/4 of a pound. The sixth apple weighed 1/4. So 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 all adds up to 6/4, which simplifies to 3/2. Because what type of numbers are 6 and 4? They're both even, all divisible by 2. Or I could write it as a mixed number because you don't go to a grocery store and say, give me 3/2 of a pound. They'll look at you and say, what are you talking about? 1.5 pounds. What's another way to represent repeated addition? What about multiplication? 6 groups of 1/4. How can you rewrite this whole number in fraction form? Remember, put a 1 underneath there because 6 divided by 1 is 6. So if I multiply the numerators, you get 6. You multiply the denominators, you get 4. You get 6/4, which simplify to 3/2 or 1 1/2. So let's look at our do now for today. Shen is making statuettes out of clay. Each statuette weighs 3/8 pound of clay, needs 3/8 pound of clay. If he makes 12 of them, so he makes 12 groups of 3/8. How many pounds of clay will he use? So I need to turn this whole number into fraction form. I multiply the numerator and I get 36. I multiply the denominator and get 8. Can I simplify this before I continue turn into a mixed number? Yes. Both numbers can be divided by 4. One of our elementary feeder schools chooses this, I think they call it the magic one. So divide both numbers by 4, you get 9 halves. Or how many groups of 2 go in 9? 4 and 1/2. So he will need 4.5 pounds of clay in order to make his 12 statuettes. So today we're learning how to multiply fractions. Let's do it in a real world problem. The dimensions of West Green Park are 50 yards by 40 yards. 2/5 of the park will be dedicated for the playground. 3/4 of that playground will be dedicated for the pool. What area of the park is for the pool? Display which part is for the playground and pool. So this is a 10 by 10 grid, or there are 100 squares. So there are 100 square. So this whole entire park has 100 unit squares. What is 2/5 of 100? I'm breaking it into parts. So in other words, I need to multiply here. How do you turn this whole number into a fraction form? Put a 1 underneath it because it means 100 divided by 1 is 100. So I multiply the numerator, I get 200. I multiply denominators, 5 times 1 is 5. And what is 200 divided by 5? 40. So I need to shade in, let me use my highlighter, out of the 100, I need to shade in 40 of them because 2/5 of 100 is 40 unit squares. So I shaded in 40 of these. 3/4 of the playground will now be dedicated for the pool. So how large is the playground? 40 square units. So 3/4 of that playground, 3/4 of 40 will be for pool. So let's go back here. Let's look at a pictorial model. Do you notice how if I broke this 100 unit square into 5 groups, groups of 20, group of 20, group of 20, group of 20, group of 20, 2 of the 5 groups will have 40. We could do the same thing with pictorial. There are, as you can tell, there are 4 columns here. 3 of the 4 columns will be used for the pull. But mathematically, let's see why. 3/4 of 40. How do I turn this whole number into a fraction? Put a 1 underneath it. So 3 multiply the numerators, you get 120. Multiply the denominators, you get 4. And what's 120 divided by 4? 30. So let me take out a different, let's use a highlighter this time. So 10, 20, and 30. So what fraction of this 100 unit square belong to the pull? 30 out of 100. I can simplify this. I can divide both numbers by 10, so it's 3/10. So 3/10 of this part represent pull. The green pull, just like the color of the swimming pool in Rio. So let's use some more examples of this. Could I have done a shortcut? I've gotten 3/10 right away instead of doing pictorial model. Could you? 3/4 of 2/5 belong to the pool. Well, if you haven't figured out, maybe the next one you will. The rectangle below represents Lucas' garden. He will plant vegetable in 2/3 of the garden. So here's this rectangular garden. He will plant vegetable in this part and this part, 2/3 of the garden. With your pencil, shade 2/3 of the garden. So I shaded 2 of the 3. Let me use a different highlighter. Luca plans on using half of the vegetable garden. So he's going to use this half. So he'll use half of the vegetable garden for his tomatoes. So as you can tell, 2/3 of the garden represent vegetable and half of that. So what fraction do you have here? It seems like it's 1/3 is the answer. Could I have gotten this through mathematics? What's half of 2/3? Times. Multiply the numerators, 2. Multiply the denominator, which is 6. 6 simplified to 1/3. Let's try another pictorial model, unless you could do it the mathematics. The rectangle below represents Jason's garden. He will plant vegetable in 1/4 of the garden. So vegetables will go in this section. Let me use a different pen color, or a different highlighter. Jason plans on using 1/3 of the vegetable section to plant tomatoes. So tomatoes will go right here. What fraction is that? Well, it's 1, 2, 3. I could divide it 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's going to be 1/12 of the entire garden belong to tomato. Could I have done it mathematically? What's 1/3 of 1/4, or 1/3 times 1/4? 1/12. Multiply the numerators, 1. Multiply the number, 12. 1/12. So, what if you like pictorial model? Well, let's try this example. What is 2/10 of 3/10? So I shade in 3/10. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. Now I need to, now I need to highlight 2/10 of the 3/10. So 1/10, 2/10. So how many are shaded double? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 100th are shaded both ways. So if you have 3/10, 2/10 of 3/10 would be 6/100. Could I have done it mathematically? What's 2 times 3? 6. What's 10 times 10? 100. And to check your work, we've already learned how to multiply by decimal now. This is 2/10 fraction is represented decimal 2/10. The fraction of 3/10 is represented by this decimal. So what is 2/10 times 3/10? That would be 6/100, which is equivalent to 6/100 or 6/100. Could I have simplified 6/100? If you're in Pattison or one of the feeder schools, you divide both numbers by 2, get them both even, and you get 3/50. So the answer could have been 6/100, 6/100, or 3/50. Let's try another example. Maybe you prefer this. 5/10 of 8/10. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. Now, what's 5/10, which is a fraction of half
Hi, new
of this?
teachers. There's
So
something that you
half
wanted to get
or
your keys this
5/10
afternoon.
or
I'm out of
half
my meeting
would
and
be
ready
this
to help you
one.
until about 3:15.
So
Thank you.
half or 5/10, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, and 5/10. So how many are shaded not once but twice? As you can tell, 40 of them. 40 of the 100 are shaded twice. Could you have simplified 40 hundredths? Yes, you can. You can divide both numbers by 10, which will be 4/10. Then you can divide both numbers by 2 and get 2/5. Some people are so good at simplifying or renaming fractions, they can divide both numbers by 20 and get 2/5. What if I do not like pictorial model? You just multiply these fractions. 5 times 8 is 40. You multiply the numerators across. Then you multiply the denominators across 100. So 40/100 would simplify to 4/10 or 2/5. And does it work in decimal form? 5/10 is represented this way in decimal. 8/10 is represented by this in decimal. That would be 40 hundredths. 40 hundredths is written this way as a fraction. Simplify, simplify. So how do you multiply a fraction of fraction? If I give you two fractions, you multiply the numerators across, then you multiply the denominators across, and sometimes you can simplify it, sometimes you can turn it into a mixed number. So in mathematics, we have a lot of groups. We're finding parts of stuff. So we're like really multiplying. So if you have half of a cookie, if I gave you half of a cookie and you ate half of that half of a cookie, what fraction did you eat? That would be 1/4. What if you have half of a cookie again and you ate 3/4 of a half? That would be 3/8. That's still less than what you started with. So when you multiply by a fraction that is less than 1, your original answer will be less. What happens if you multiply by just 1? How can you rewrite this 1 as in fraction form? Put a 1 underneath it. Multiply the numerators, multiply the denominator. 1 times 1/2, or 1 of 1/2 is half. What about 3/2 times 1/2? That would be 3/4. So we ended up more than we started with because we had half of it, then we ended up more. So when you multiply by a number that's more than 1 or greater than 1, the original number increases. So let's try it. What's 2 groups of 1/2? Let's rewrite the whole number in fraction form. So it'd be 2 halves, or just 1. And definitely, as you can tell, we double what we started with. So what do you notice about a quantity of 1/2? When the first factor is less than 1, let me use my keyboard, the quantity decreases. However, when the first factor is equal to 1, it stays the same. And what happens when you multiply and the quantity first factor is greater than 1, the quantity increases. So let's answer 2 more questions. Mr. Joe caught 2/5 pound of squid and 1/4 pound of crab. Being generous, he donated half of his seafood catch to SpongeBob. How many pounds did he donate? So he caught 2/5 pound of squid and 1/4 pound of crab. Do you remember how to add fractions? Can I rename these into what does 5 and 4 share in common? I need a common denominator. They both share the common denominator 20. So how many 5s go into 20? 4 groups. So 2 times 4 is 8. So 2/5 is the same thing as 4/10, 6/15, or 8/20. How can I rename 1/4? Multiply by 5. 1/4 is equivalent to 2/8, 3/12, 4/16, and 5/20. So if you add it up, it's 13/20. So I caught 13/20 pounds of squid and crab. I donated half of that amount to SpongeBob. So what's half of 13/20? 13/40 is the answer. 13/40 pound. Poor Squidward and Mr. Crab. Tyra's Banks' favorite food is the burrito. Mr. Joe went to Taco Bell and bought one burrito to share with Tyra, because I am so generous. He kept 4/5 of the burrito for himself. So let's cut this into fifths. 1, 2, 3. So I kept J for Joe, mine. J for Joe, mine. J for Joe, mine. And J for Joe, mine. So, in other words, I just gave Tyra 1/5. So this belongs to Tyra right there. Tyra only ate 2/3 of that share. What fractional part does she eat? So, if we divide it, cut this like this way, she ate this part and this part. So she ate 2 out of 15 parts. But could I have gotten that? Could I have gotten that in a... so she ate 2/3 of her share. So Tyra is left with 1/5 of the burrito. She ate 2/3 of her fifth. So that's 2/15 is the answer. So she ate only 2/15 of the burrito. And this is the study of multiplying fraction by a fraction. Multiply the numerator, multiply the denominator, sometimes you have to simplify.